let's start with the Lost in Translation.
Lost in Translation. Yeah, I mean, that's quite topical, isn't it? I mean, what doesn't get lost in translation these days, just in general. But it's something that you see a lot in the jungle, or something that I've seen in the Amazon rainforest, where there's quite literally a language barrier, and a lot of people don't speak Spanish who go to the Amazon rainforest, and even if they do, the language that's used is quite often different. So, for example, I started taking Spanish lessons so that I could communicate with the curanderos. And I was largely kind of learning, what's in my pencil case and like where's the hospital, all that kind of stuff. But actually, the language that they use in the rainforest in the Shipibo ceremonies is much more centered around the heavens open, the angels came down, remove this energetic blockage, and so there is definitely a kind of a language barrier. But even with direct translations from somebody who is native to that land, there's also a conceptual language barrier as well. And I noticed this in myself as well, especially when I first started dieting plants, not just drinking ayahuasca, which is the cornerstone of shamanic training. And there's a tendency for people from a more Christian background, even if you don't identify with being Christian, if it's part of your upbringing, to project those, I guess, ideals or that understanding of spirituality and religion onto what the Shipibo people are saying, what the indigenous peoples of the Amazon rainforest are saying. And so we see that with dieting plants, with communicating with plant spirits. Quite often people perceive plant spirits, especially Noya Rao, which is the main, kind of the cornerstone of the Shipibo tradition, at least the lineage that I practice in. And it's described as being, pure light.
Was this a Spanish word?
Oh, Noya Rao? No,
Yeah.
it's Shipibo. It's Shipibo. Rao means medicine in Shipibo. And then so you just have different kinds of Rao. And this is Noya Rao, which means flying medicine. It literally translates as flying medicine. And then you see people project their perceptions of Christianity onto this. So, this is a spirit that I need to, obey or repent or show my devotion to. Some of which is true, but it's not as simple as that. These things are based around energy. When you open up a plant dieta, you have to follow strict guidelines surrounding what you eat and your thoughts and all that stuff. And it's not just about, you make a mistake and then you repent. The reason that you, as in Christianity, the reason that you do that is because these energies are very delicate. And so by eating the wrong food, you're damaging the energy, and you need to correct that. And it's not so much about, have you been a good boy? You're literally opening a physical process, almost like they call it like spiritual surgery. That's what they say it's like.
Well, we were talking about dieting, and I think this is what I've been sometimes talking to people, where they are like, there's a specific routine, which if you're preparing to go drink ayahuasca, let's say, there's like low salt, no sugar, no sex, no alcohol, cigarettes, any stimulants, essentially. So there is a physiological element when it comes to heart rate.
Mm-hmm.
But also I think, which I would like you to say, like from psychiatry point of view, that like what is ayahuasca does to the heart, like actually blood pressure wise, and then what are the things that are useful, but the multiple layer, which is that if you observe all these different life form, you can see like different kind of patterns and energies and behaviors, like deep conditioning. So humans are like very attachable, moving, vibrant creatures, and that's why we manipulate our environment and we change things. But I think with the tree, it's like if you just anytime if you spend half an hour with a tree, you would have this like this just this
Yeah.
silence. Like it's like that kind of feeling, which is in a way, if you're about to interact, it's like a way to reduce a crash
Hmm.
with this kind of intense energy going into this wide ranging, somehow like a peaceful energy, which within has so much vibration in itself, but it's like a different kind of a entry zone. That's how I generally feel it and see it when I interact with different kind of conscious altering experiences.
Hmm.
And so similar, growing up in Lahore within the tribe-like community, same thing is that if you're about to enter into oneness, which was the experience, I don't think that's how people where I come from would describe it. It's just me now out of it and analyzing it, so describing it in that way. It is the same thing when you prepare for 10 days fasting, being very careful, no external media at all, no news, bare minimum colors, even like what you wear.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So you wear, and also you behave in a way, not because you're preparing for something. And I think this is a very interesting part which I want to come to, because it's not a preparation for something which you're going to go and do. It's part of your life. This is who you are. And that is a very interesting stage we are in, where we have to bring these things out of this context, where now it's not part of our lives. We are just kind of participating in it. But how they were developed, it's not like different to what they were, all the time. All the time they were doing it. Like the shaman isn't being a shaman because they're going to the Burning Man for a moment. This is their life. It is part of their life. And so that's how, I was growing up. And in that way, I can see why they were doing this kind of energetic shift within the brain to then enter into this space. And there's no doubt about it. If you haven't really done, in a way, you can feel. It's not like that something punishes you or something. You can feel the year you did well, like the journey, and the year you really didn't. You can see the difference in experience.
For sure. I mean, it's in my experience with the plant dietas, it's surprisingly methodological. It's surprisingly physiological. You follow these rules. You have to have this connection, right? You have to be able to connect with the plant, and you do that largely through the closest words to describe what you do would be prayer, or concentrating on this particular energy. It's quite hard to describe without using religious words, and they're loaded, which is tricky as well. But it's really practical. And so if you can be as devoted as you want. If you eat pork, which is one of the things you're not supposed to, you're going to feel awful, and you're going to have to purge, and you're going to have to do a load of things. You can't just repent. It's a really physiological thing. But I just wanted to touch on the lifestyle as well. So when we think about the concept of dieting, this beautiful description that I was given by one of the curanderos, one of the shamans that I work with, was that life is a diet. Everything you do is dieting in some form. How you choose to spend your time, who you choose to engage with, that's what you're dieting. That energy comes into you. And we know that this is true because if we, scroll on social media before going to bed, at least for me, it's in my dreams. What I've done during the day quite often will be processed within my dreams. It's just that when you do an intense process, like opening up a plant dieta, you're just doing that in a more intense, contained way. But there are also many ways of doing dietas. The Shipibo have a particularly, I guess you can call it intense would be one word, effective would be another word, where you try to minimize any contact with anyone else as much as possible. You have a super simple diet in isolation, ideally no speaking to anyone. so that you're wide open energetically, so this energy can flow into you. But there are many other communities, even some based in the UK, that do their own forms of plant dieta, which is where you don't fast, you don't have to go into isolation. You just go to a tree every day and you sit and you contemplate with that tree and you spend time with that tree. So it's interesting. I mean, there's a paper that came out, I think it must have been about 15 years ago now as well, which said that you, on average, your personality will be the average of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with. And so, for most people, that's going to be like, best friend, partner, I don't know, some family maybe. But if you have a friend that you don't really like, or if you hate your job and you spend all your time with your boss, it's like, oh my God, that energy will be coming into you in some form and rubbing off on you. So it makes you think, who you spend your time with, and that's super important.
Yeah. You asked me about what I was doing in the dark 3 weeks, which I spent pretty much, closed off in the room, which I was doing the literature review. So there is this one concept. So I think it's good to update you as well. So, my research around learning has a lot to do with set and setting. Like, how can we bring concept of set and setting into the universities?
That's cool.
And like, because that's very emotionally grounding practices. And these people are the master of creating this ritualistic set and setting to get the maximum kind of transformation, change, healing, whatever you want to call it. And so, and this is what I realize. Even though these things are fantastic, I think in its form, what they are, obviously, they cannot be just transported, because they need to be translated. They need to also be scalable, which makes it a completely different challenge. Not only just scalable, how can it then face the challenges which we are trying to address that are coming through this exponentially growing cyberspace? Have I ever asked you what a cyberspace is? Have I ever done that?
No, I don't think so.
Oh man, like this is going to be one of those things which I just did it last time as well with another friends. Okay, so just going back to this diet thing, there's a concept called ontological design.
Yeah.
You have which is like ontology, reality, but ontological design, it's that we humans create spaces, and then the spaces creates us back, and through that we then get changed and create another space which then acts back upon us, creating this feedback loop. And so that concept has been the oldest thing in indigenous communities in South America, and how I grew up with the pain rituals, which I was talking to you about. But over there, how we would call it would be, the best translation would be relationality. Like, everything is relational. So, which you were saying about the people you spend time with. I mean, it wasn't like, it isn't in a way that you can call it an energy or you can call it influence. It's the same word. This is the problem we have now, where we get confused with what words are we using.
For sure.
Like I use this example. It's like the god of I don't know, rage. Whatever they used to call god of rage, and it's something which is older than even what human species, when human species was formed. Like, this is a reptilian time thing. Now we call it, it's a phenomena. Pretty similar thing in a way. I understand that it changes the context and how we socially interpret it, but if you're talking about the idea, it's like understanding how to perceive these words which people are using, and to see how we are still kind of just changing the words and using it.
For sure.
Which is a different conversation. But ontological design is a very similar concept in that way, which is different than just environmental influence, because what you do is that it gives agency in a way to the space, which means that the tools we are creating or the setting we are creating is not value neutral. It actually impacts on its creator, because a TV would force you to sit and watch, because you created a TV, and then TV is creating a space back on you, or a knife you hold. You have to hold it in a particular way from a place where it doesn't cut, where the handle is, and then you can see opportunities and improve it, and then essentially, you can kind of like come back to a space where you make some changes, or you are creative and you use it in a different way, but still it is impacting on you. And so that essentially has become a very important part of my research, which is that, and that's why I'm coming to cyberspace, is that it is actually the first time where this kind of relationality or ontological space is very important, because cyberspace in itself, which is the tech and technology and everything mediated through technology, is becoming a whole complicated, complex sphere, like a natural ecosystem. So it's not a tool any longer. It's like a connected ecosystem all around us. And in that, I think that concept, which I think comes from this indigenous place of set and setting, where you are like, what are you dieting? What kind of prayer are you doing? What kind of tools you are creating for yourself? What kind of space you are creating within and outside? And then when you interact with something, so with something which is like a plant, but I call consciousness something like, it's like a self-reflective subjective loops. And so you have this consciousness of a human, we have these self-reflective subjective loops interacting with another form, which I don't know what it is at that level. And then these kind of things are kaleidoscopically combining into each other, and then going in different places. So I think that is why it is so important, particularly in these spaces, to be aware of these things. It's like a spaceship you're operating, like a slight slight change of a controller on long trajectories could really change the course. Like you might end up at a different solar system.
Well, if we think about it from a Shipibo perspective, so the Shipibo largely subscribe to animism, that everything is conscious. And I've heard these amazing stories in the Amazon rainforest. It seems like everything is possible. Exorcism is a normal part of daily life. There are numerous stories about people quite literally being raised from the dead. I'm yet to verify those and to see the raising from the dead stories, but at this point, I'm getting pretty open to most things. But there is numerous stories of objects that have energy curing people. So, for example, there's a curandera who I know, based in the Amazon rainforest, who received a diagnosis of terminal cancer from a Western hospital. A lot of the Shipibo curanderos and curanderas, quite refreshingly, just go to Western hospital when they need to. They understand that Western hospital is better for some things, and that Shipibo traditional medicine is better for others. For example, Don Rono, who I apprentice with, he was on retreat and he went off to go and get a COVID vaccine halfway through the retreat. Everyone else there, all of the rest of the New Age community, were refusing the COVID vaccine, and Don Rono just left to go and get his vaccine halfway through. Not a big deal. And when I spoke to him about it, he just says, well, yeah, of course. Why would you not? I think afterwards he did a purgative. He said he did a purgative to remove some of the impurities from the vaccine, which was interesting. Which was super interesting.
It's like the best of the both worlds.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh man, I wish I could have done the same.
Now I'm thinking, oh shit, like what impurity I still have. What I mean?
I got so sick after that booster. But anyway, that's a different conversation.
Yes.
But anyway, this curandera She received a diagnosis of terminal cancer. She was using plant medicine to try and treat it. Western hospitals said there was nothing else that they could do to treat her. And she ended up, this is what she said, curing the cancer using a kushma, which is it's kind of like the indigenous robe that you get when you become a maestro, a kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like a consultant doctor. You're running ceremonies by yourself. People go to you. You're no longer in training. I mean, arguably the training never ends, but you know what I mean. Yeah. And this kushma had been passed down through generations, and it had so much positive energy in it, so much positive plant energy, that just by wearing it, and I'm not sure how long she wore it for, if it was a prolonged period or if she connected with it somehow, but the kushma, according to this curandera, who also has, I can't see why she would lie about that. It's a bizarre thing to lie about. The kushma cured her of cancer because of the energy that's in that space. And so it makes you think, the energy that's in the maloka, which is the structure that's used for ayahuasca ceremonies, probably going to have some really positive energy in there. Well, it depends who your maestro is, but hopefully. But then it also makes me think of some of the, really shitty offices I've worked in the NHS. They, some of them, no windows. They have like no windows, and and the heating is either on or off, just ridiculously hot. Those taps, they either burn you or they're freezing. So you're permanently separated from nature, not even windows. The environment with those not strobe lights, but those strip lights, the office lights, they're just when you spend the day in there and you come out, you almost feel like you have like some weird kind of film on your skin. Do you know what I mean? Where you're you feel like you need to have a shower and you're not quite sure why. All you've done is just sit there all day. And then obviously, in a lot of hospitals, surrounded by people who are dying, or in my case, people who are severely mentally unwell, normally psychotic. So it's interesting to think about the impact that these working environments will be having on us as well. And just, I know many people are like this. I'm sure maybe you had this when you sat down to do your literature review. If you have a clean space, so many people experience that, right? You need a clean space to have a clean mind. It's a positive feedback loop or a negative feedback loop, but maybe it's more than just psychological.
No, you're right. Like it's weird because what you're saying about the kushma which they were wearing. We have a very similar thing in Pakistan, India. I'm not sure if it's outside of that, but again, it's used for jaundice or hepatitis or jaundice, essentially.
That's interesting.
But it's a different thing. It's like what they do is that they take a stem of a particular dried stem of a particular plant, and then they pray a lot of they bind every knot onto a stem every time they pray. So it's that they're binding that energy. Literally, this is what they describe it. And then they say that you just wear it, and then it starts to slowly loosen up, which I don't know what technique is that, because I actually genuinely don't remember what. Like, I was confused because when I was wearing it as a necklace, it was just right to my upper chest, and then it slowly becomes longer and longer, and it goes to your torso, lower than your torso. What they say is that we have binded this energy, which is slowly gonna suck out whatever wrong with you, and as it sucks it in, it becomes longer and longer and longer. Which is like, again, like, disclaimer, obviously, just don't know what it is, and it's a very hard boundary to know whether for jaundice was that working or actually the medicine which I was taking.
Oh, you were okay, yeah. Well, I mean, that's a massive confounding variable.
No,
right?
I know. Well, actually, the weird part is that the medicine I was taking was not Western medicine.
Okay.
It was the herbal medicine, but it's as effective, to be very honest.
But the the necklace, was that specifically for jaundice?
So it is, yeah, it's weird. Like that, for that category of diseases, there are certain category of disease, and for nothing else, which is like, which
So
says that,
interesting.
yeah, which is like when your eyes are yellow, whatever that category of disease is, they're like, this is what you do. And it has to be a specific stem,
Yeah.
dried, a particular thread, thread. Not a threat. It's like
Picture of threat.
Yeah, you just threatening.
You remove
Yeah.
that yellow from your eyes right
Yeah,
now, or
yeah.
else. Okay.
Exactly. It's like that probably could work actually because of a placebo effect, I think, at this point. Like imagine, you know that experiment which they did with the rice you were talking about?
With the what?
With the rice.
Oh, with the rice.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like they were like really bad.
Yeah.
And then
Saying
they-
bad things to the rice. Yeah, and it died.
Yeah. Anyway, so but it's fascinating the similarities I find with you things you say. And again, it is like hard to really understand the whole ecosystem, particularly in this element which I'm telling you about, because it's kind of broken, to be very honest, that element, because it's not really practiced that much. But yeah, ritualistic practice, as you were saying, set and setting is very well practiced.
But I find how similar a lot of the treatments that I've come across in the Amazon rainforest are, even to every kind of spiritual tradition, including Christianity. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And you know, I think Christianity has a pretty bad rep right now. You know, of all the religions, it's probably the least cool. You know, it's a lot of people like to not like Christianity right now. But if you actually read the Bible, it's really far out. You know, it's
Yeah.
really, really far out. And I alluded to this before, but in the jungle, it's really common, and I'm frequently involved in them in my apprenticeship, is exorcisms. It's just a regular part of work. You know, you come into ceremony, person has a few demons stuck to them, you know, and you call in your guides, your allies in the spirit world. And the most important thing is that you believe that it's going to work. You trust that it's going to work. There is no way that this exorcism is not going to work. You have to have complete faith. And in the research that we do in the jungle, you know, we put a real emphasis on doing it in collaboration with the indigenous healers. So we have an indigenous board of advisors, and we work alongside them to come up with ideas for research projects, to interpret the results and then to disseminate the results. And when I've spoken to Rono about what he wants to look at, he always says faith. Faith is the number one most important thing when it comes to healing. The person undergoing the treatment needs to have faith that it's going to work. They need to have faith that the healer knows what they're doing and is going to make it work. And the maestro needs to have complete faith that what they are doing is working. And so the scientist within me, especially the scientist 10 or so years ago when I first ended up in the Amazon rainforest, would say, yeah, faith, placebo, okay, maybe we could use those terms interchangeably. But I think that placebo as a term gets such a bad rep. You know, what happens if we replaced the word placebo with consciousness healing, you know, or something like that? You're tapping into something that's incredibly powerful, that pretty much every tradition around the world, including allopathic medicine, agrees can be a very effective treatment. And then for, you know, people who are interested in economics, it's completely free, and there are also no side effects. You know, it's great. It's amazing. Yeah, I think the world would be a very different place in terms of healthcare if we started embracing these kind of concepts.
Yeah, I mean, there's this book written by Ian McGilchrist, the master and the emissary.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he did do a long study around like left hemisphere, right hemisphere, and I know that he describes it like this notion of like, oh, the sciences move far beyond left and right. It is somewhat true, but not completely, and also there's no there's a complete like consensus that how we pay attention, it changes like the reality within our mind, and the left and the right processes in a different way. And so if it makes sense why placebo at multiple level is considered not useful, is because if the whole paradigm and the dynamic of um, pursued around, let's say, science is only left like determinist, not deterministic,
Reductionistic.
reductionistic, and only very logical and rational within confined specific, and like unconnected with the whole context, then obviously it would be a misnomer. You can see the reality from that point of view, and cultures and nations, even within Greek and not really Rome, but yeah, within Greek, you can see this rising up of like a holistic view. Now, no, the science essentially also about the morality and the subjective experience and consciousness and our relationship with external world. But obviously, the metering and measuring was easier, so that's just got left, and the messy part was like, whatever, we'll deal with it later. And but you can see the trajectory, but you can see that our trajectory when it's for world wars, essentially most of the science coming out of, which is an imminent threat, like our medicine and science and physics. Yeah, measuring is very important, and knowing exactly all the effects are very important. So it and our education systems are very much like factory war based education systems. Sit them in a class, give a bell, put them in rows like an assembly line, literally separate them with classes. And yeah, you will know Harari has done a lot of work around it. And so you can unpack it, every single element, like the level of mathematics needs to be taught. Why that? It's because that's useful to calculate the trajectory of projectiles and artillery attacks. It's weird how like these systems are set up, but
That's interesting.
it makes sense that this concept, first of all, looking from that leftist, specific, very logical, disconnected, and fixed model of the world, seems like we need to actually control it. Secondly, if, first of all, it's possible, that actually shakes the whole like foundation of like, wait a second, you can self-heal? You like, and also the evolutionary biology wasn't that I would say expansive as it is now. And so that culminated, and then the market, obviously, it's like, well, if it's a placebo effect and it works as much as the pill, then why would I take a pill?
Yeah.
And so I think yeah, all of these are now like being understood, and I think you're right, like the faith. And I've realized it so much, and when you were saying it, it was really impactful because I've recently gone through a very hard experience. I lost someone really close to me, and through grieving, I started to first time experience like this intense like grief, and sometimes you have this intense anxiety, and I was so surprised that the psychosomatic effects which I would have on my body, and I just can't believe it. Like it's just genuinely, at first time I was like, wow, and I'm aware that it's in my mind, but there is no way that there is any difference on how physically I'm feeling with my, like hand doing something or tingling or numbness. But suddenly I'm sitting in a train, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't move my leg. And I'm like, I generally can't move my leg. Oh, what would I do? And there's this pattern. So I'm talking about nocebo, the negative elements of that same thing. Yeah. And then suddenly, like for a moment, I forget. and the train stops, and it's like unconsciously it's my station, and I just got up and moved.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then as I'm moving, I realize, oh, I'm moving.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And of course, this reductionist objective view of reality is one science, but there are other sciences as well. And so in Western science, we largely try to reduce everything down to the, you know, the kind of the simplest explanation. So for example, in drug trials, the gold standard is the randomized control trial. We ideally compare it to a quote unquote, you know, placebo effect. And you try to remove any factors that could influence the outcome other than the drug that you're looking at. So you can specifically say it was as a result of this molecule that we saw these effects. Now, this is the complete opposite to indigenous science, which I would say also is a science. You know, it's based on trial and error. It's been developed over hundreds, thousands of years. And what we see is that the most important thing is the subjective experience. So what happened when you went into ceremony? What did you see? What did you experience? What did you feel? That is the most important thing, rather than trying to break it down to some kind of reductionist explanation as well, which is super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so you're right. Like both these parts are really important. Sometimes you do need to really precisely break down things and to try to understand these various different elements of reality. I think that a lot of problem comes when we are transitioning hard sciences into social sciences or behavioral sciences or even biology, because then you have consciousness, which has a subjective experience. And I think that's where it gets a little bit weirder, because we know we have a subjective experience. We just think, or we just yet don't know that if we are studying atoms, or if we are studying physical reality or black holes, we don't know what that's, if they have it, or if that's part of, you know, if they have a type of subjective experience. Even we don't even know if, well, we don't think that they are conscious, but I think we just don't know what that means. And I'm like being conservative because I'm trying to present that particular point of view, which is that yes, hard sciences trying to, you know, separate things, and it could work in measuring and projecting and predicting various different measurements, or even coming up with systems like astrophysics. Yes, but the moment you translate that particular paradigm of scientific method, the method should still remain the same. I think it's a beautiful discovery, and it's really good, which is it's used nearly everywhere, where you are like, you do trial and error, you compare and contrast, you correct, and you don't lie to yourself. You're really honest. You're not trying to prove the biases. That's what a scientist is. It could be a shaman, it could be a mystic, it could be what we call a scientist. And so I think this is where the biggest problem is now happening, is this, like, particularly when it comes to psychedelics, it's like there's no difference between objective and subjective when it comes to psychedelics. It's like you have to get a person really which has not grown up in any culture, you know, like, and have no experience, like a clean slate, and be like, give them and be like, what about, what is it helping you? But it's like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Because, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah. It's like, because then, yeah, of course, they have their own cultural context, and they have, there's just the moment, and on the top, like, psychedelics literally melt the objective and the subjective. That is the point of taking, essentially, in a way, that oneness experience where there isn't any separation, which is whatever, you know, if you get to that experience. And so then how would you, like, and that is breaking down a bit, and that's a tough question. But I think that happens because we try to import a very specific model, which is useful, and it has worked, like a mathematical model, which is on abstract numbers, which we don't know what their feelings is, and we don't, and there is a clear distinction between some of the objective elements which it's representing in the universe. But anyway, says if you have something to add. But I wanted to know more about, like, when you were saying about Christianity, like, what were you referring to when you said, oh, it's like similar?
Yeah. In terms of Christianity, I was thinking about the old Bible studies to do with exorcism.
Oh yes. Okay.
So it is. The things that happen in the Amazon rainforest are quite similar in terms of the spiritual, in terms of spirituality. There was something else I wanted to say in response to what you were saying. It was on the tip of my tongue. I think it might have gone.
Well, I was talking about the scientific model.
Yeah,
scientists could be.
No, it's gone. We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually very similar with the. It's weird. Like, I don't know if I've talked about it with Islam as well. Like, early on, if you really look at what, like, Hajj is, when they go to Makkah for that main pilgrimage. So you have to walk in a desert to that other city where there's an asteroid.
I love it already.
Yeah. Like the main black stone in Kaaba.
Yeah.
Is asteroid. That's what
cool.
the whole Islam prays towards. That is the source of energy. I mean, it just blows
really
my mind.
That's really interesting.
And that stone, clearly it's an asteroid. I just, no one can touch it. It would be fantastic to just test it.
Yeah.
Probably mostly iron, but still, like, apparently this has been there since Adam. Oh, of course, there's different, because this is such an old thing. So there's different, different stories, different version of stories, but this has been there for a very long time. People before ever there were monotheistic religion, and it actually says it in Islamic traditions. They used to pray anyway. So there was, like, different prophets came with different type of people who were still praying it. So this is a stone which apparently is being found in, like, stories at the beginning of this civilization of ours. So I don't know, like 10,000 or whatever years, let's say. And this is, of course, it's a guess because no one knows when Adam came to Earth. So that stone is the center point where they have built that building, Kaaba. And so you go there, you walk. Okay, there's a specific day. You have to shave your head. You cannot kill even a lice. Or like nothing. Or
why do you have to shave your head?
Just because it's like a transformation. So whatever your whatever your hairs or things are, but you will see what I mean. Like, everyone looks very similar in that way. And I just I like it. It's like a punk rock. You must imagine, like, thousands of people just bald in the sun roaming around. But anyway, and then you cannot kill anything. If you have accidentally, not like intentionally, accidentally killed your own lice, or a fly, or you stepped on something, that's it. You can go back. You turn back.
But that must have been, you must kill things accidentally all the time.
Well, yeah, right? I mean, if you are aware of it.
Right, okay. Yeah, you go back. Where did you go back to?
Yeah, just that's it. It's over.
What, you just go home?
Yeah. Yes, I know. I mean, I'm sure people were like, I'm just gonna ignore it. You know what I mean? Yes, you know what I mean.
How truthful am I gonna be
exactly.
about this ant?
Yeah, exactly. But that's the point. It's essentially, it's like, it's the sentiment around it. And really, people do not, it like nothing, not even a bug. So, okay. So now, okay, you do kill at a certain point. There's a limit to it. I mean, you are eating it all the time. It's about like what you. I should have framed it a little better. You kill because you're eating anyway, but nothing more than what you really need to survive.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So which means that this fly did not need to die at all because you're not going to eat it. There's no point. If you do that, it's over.
So with the way
Null and wide.
the way to survive and not have to go home on the pilgrimage is just to eat the fly. So that's what you got to eat your lice.
Yes,
And that's what you got to.
exactly.
Oh man, I just
I
swatted
know.
a mosquito. I'm gonna have to eat it.
Exactly. I mean, well, yeah, if you're overeating. So, okay, so now you're going there and you are in this white cloth. So just like one cloth, which is not like sewed together. So it's just one piece of cloth wrapped around. The moment you enter the space, no one is husband or wife.
Oh, interesting.
So the relationship breaks. You actually, when you come out, you have to redo the contract
Really?
if you want to. So once
If you want to.
of course.
Oh, so that would be so
Null
you could just go there and
Yeah.
then come out and be like, oh, actually,
Yeah.
I'd
Like, thank you
see you
so
later.
much. Yeah. No one will. Yeah, that would be fine. Legally, it would be
Really?
over. Okay, look at this is Burning Man or something.
yeah.
Just look at this crazy. Like it's so edgy. This is 1400 something years ago.
Yeah.
The dude is like, listen, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna all walk. Only eat what we really need to eat to survive. Anything else would be considered excess. Shave our heads. Everyone will enter. No one will be in anyone's other relationship. So no brothers or sisters or anything. I mean, brothers and sisters, obviously, when you come back, you don't have to sign a contract. So it just comes back.
Yeah.
But husband and wife is the most like prominent one, which you can see. Everyone is in the white, shaved, circling exactly at the same space, thousands of people chanting same thing around an asteroid. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, so that's and when I read it and I see it, it's like these things are so edgy at that time.
I mean, they're still edgy now.
I mean, even if you do it now, really,
Yeah.
if you do this, how like I can see described now, it's like going through the motion thing. Like it's just so many people. But you're not going on a pilgrimage. Like you can go on a pilgrimage to Stonehenge, truly now, or you can be a visitor and just go to the Stonehenge.
Yeah.
You know that experience.
Yeah.
You know exactly. You know the subjectivity of your mind. You know how you're going to stay. You know the sacred state you have. You know which days maybe to go to.
For sure, but it's the same as psychedelics, right? Like you can go to an ayahuasca ceremony as a visitor. Like you can totally go drink ayahuasca, experience it, and that was something you did that one time, and you have that kind of expanded state of consciousness for 6 hours, and then you kind of forget about it. Or you can go as a spiritual quest, which can completely transform your life. That's the reason I love ayahuasca so much. It is this mix of being an ancient and a modern practice, and it is incredibly edgy, as so many of these things are. Like the Bible. Like the Bible is really out there. And the character of Jesus Christ, he was a complete anarchist in an extremely peaceful way, which is amazing, entirely peaceful. But he was an anarchist. He really shook things up. Really, really, really shook things up. But if you do approach ayahuasca with that kind of that respect, and you go deep, it can be incredibly transformative. And when you think about what you're actually doing, what the indigenous people say you're doing, is really out there. They describe ayahuasca as being a vehicle that takes you into the spirit world. It also has its own spirit, but it takes you into the spirit world. And then you have the potential to interact with numerous different spirits. Some are good, some are bad. Just like if you got dropped off in like Manchester, some people are good, some people are bad. It's up to you who you talk about, and it can really transform your life.
But in Manchester, mostly dodgy.
Mostly bad. Yeah, you're right. In Manchester, mostly dodgy. In the spirit world, I'd say it's probably about a 50-50 split. Yeah.
So, okay, this is perfect point. So context, people are using ayahuasca, as you said, going for tourism in a way. So the context now we find ourselves in our world is that we have various different catastrophic threats coming from disintegration between each other as families and tribes and human beings and our relationship to the cosmos. Then we have systems of progress which are exponentially growing towards self-termination, like any system which consumes its ecosystem much faster than it could sustain. Then we have twin nuclei problem, which is we have hydrogen bombs, where if a winner supposedly fires, we all lose.
Yeah, I mean, who wins in that situation?
Yeah. Which is and
tardigrades.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're
the only ones.
Yeah. They are. Yeah, and they look pretty cool also.
yeah, quite small though.
Yeah, for now. Imagine tardigrades like 3 million years later or something, doing like podcast with their 8-faced mics because like that's how their sound comes out. They're like, yes, there was this species.
Think about that.
Yeah. A few million years ago. So. And then you have asteroids and solar flares, whatever. But just what we are doing as humans, even those catastrophic risks are huge. And then on the top of it, we have exponential automation which is backed up by this narrow intelligence systems which we are creating, which people call AI. And so all that is leading towards a very unknown cliff where it looks like that we're gonna fall off. It's like we have a really small chance to kind of find little narrow bridge or a ridge between somewhere in that cliff, and we have no idea where we are going, and we gotta slow down also a little bit and then find this space and then actually go through it in a caring capacity manner in some way. So I think ayahuasca is, of course, healing, but also conditioning. As you said, it transforms your life truly and how you see the reality and how you can go to different realms and bring back information. And that is a very useful method and a relationship. But I think now, because it's psychedelics have become pop. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like,
for sure.
The first time I did it, even 1,500 years ago. Oh, sorry. Oh my goodness.
That's the first time you did it?
Oh shit, I revealed it. Oh no.
You tardigrade, you.
No. I kept it for so long.
I'm actually a deity.
Just hand raise.
Yeah, you got me.
Yeah,
you got me. You got me.
There you go. Let's close the podcast. Okay. And you will still hear my voice. Okay, so
oh man, Raza is omnipresent. The podcast questions never stop.
And it's like, well, that would truly help people's mental state.
No,
like, 5 minutes later, everyone is like dying or killing.
It's sounding like the making of a psychotic population. I'm not gonna lie.
Exactly. Oh my god. Yeah. Oh, well, I hope there's no deity like that who tries to play around. Like, imagine that. Oh, let's play with these humans for a little while, and everyone.
I mean, it
crazy.
Sounds like simulation theory. I mean, which is a whole other avenue.
True. Okay, so yeah, like, yeah, 14, 15, or 15 years ago, like it would be, yeah, not like rare. I mean, which is like just now, like when 15 years means nothing really. It's not an exponential tech. So clearly, like a one singular entity, which is somehow growing through research, through media, of course, through podcasts. I think podcasts have done a huge role in making it popular. And then apparently, Mike Tyson plays his part, um, unintentionally, probably. So now it is really pop. Okay, not only it is popular, it's actually that so many people wants to do it or are doing it. So we will go to a place where it's not going to be, what we were talking about for the previous part of the podcast, like very individual effects, maybe expanding to your family and community. But this will affect in a way which we now have to think in a global way, where massive amount of people will do certain psychedelics. And so now, if it is about spiritual or deep human conditioning transformation, which is one of the reasons what has got us to where we are in these kind of catastrophic problems, challenges we are facing. Well, I mean, how would that help? Because I genuinely, I don't know anything. Well, this is why I actually wanted to bring it up, because it is a very open topic. It's like, okay, so the thing is popular and there's these famous people doing it. What would that bring into the consciousness of this world through these humans? Then there are a massive amount of people from different religious cultural background doing it. Some of them are tourists, some of them are going to misinterpret, some of them are going to be psychopaths who will use it to just get it inside and expand their business.
For sure. I mean, I think a few things. I think so much of it depends on how you're using it. And let me give you an example here. So, 10 years ago, when I first started doing research into ayahuasca 10 years ago, it was just before they went really mainstream. And it was still kind of underground. It was still left field. When I did my interview to come to King's College London, I was told by my supervisor, don't mention anything to do with your research into ayahuasca. It's still too left field. And so I actually, in my interview, just when I was asked about, what I've been up to in this time period, I was like, oh, nothing. And actually, I've been doing this research. Obviously, when I got in, then I was like, oh, I've been doing, a lot of research into ayahuasca. But since that point, we've now come to a point where psychedelics have become extremely popular. Everyone thought, or most people thought, they were going to be this new hope for psychiatry. And now we're entering what most people are calling the trough of disillusionment, which is that the results that we're getting from psychedelic trials aren't as good as everyone thought they were going to be. So, for example, there was a landmark study a couple of years ago, which was comparing psilocybin to escitalopram, which is one of the most common SSRIs that we have, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antidepressants. And everyone thought that psilocybin was, or most people thought psilocybin was going to blow escitalopram out of the water. And actually, it showed that escitalopram and psilocybin were as effective as each other at reducing levels of depression. And most people were really disappointed by this, thinking that psilocybin was going to be, this groundbreaking thing. But when we look at the research that's been done in observational settings, we see that psychedelics in these naturalistic settings, so for example, ayahuasca in the jungle, seems to have a much more positive effect. It seems to be the effect seems to be much stronger. And so, many scientists would argue that that's because it's observational research, it's because it's not controlled. There are other factors which are causing the changes that we see. So, for example, with my research in the jungle, some of the comments that we get is, well, how do you know it's as a result of the ayahuasca? Because it could have been due to the effect of the jungle, could be due to the fact that people are, they're on a retreat, they're away from their work, they're away from their family stresses, all of these kinds of things. So I think it really depends on the way that you're using the psychedelic. And I feel that if you use psychedelics if you treat them as serotonin agonists, like the antidepressants, they start behaving like serotonin agonists. If you treat them like a sacred medicine, they start behaving like a sacred medicine. And if you use them, and this is interesting, this is some of the work I'm starting to do now. If you use them for insights and creativity, I reckon they're going to start behaving in ways that give you insights and allow you to have creative problem solving abilities. Now, the flip side of this is if you use them for either things that don't benefit humanity or things which are bad for humanity. And so I read about this in my PhD. There are numerous cases of people taking lots of LSD, like in gangs, and then committing atrocities. So either going out and kind of murder, or cult behavior, and all these kind of really disturbing sexual things going on under the influence of psychedelics. Or there was one person that I met who was he worked for McDonald's and was in charge of designing shop fronts for the shop fronts of McDonald's in, I think it was it Hong Kong? It might have been Hong Kong, maybe it was the Philippines, I'm not sure. And he drank ayahuasca, and I think everyone was expecting him to realize that he shouldn't be working for McDonald's. But that wasn't really even on his radar. And he came out to the ceremonies with much better ideas about how McDonald's could design their shop fronts. So I think all of it comes down to, which is a huge revelation for him. It's really beneficial for him. I think a lot of it comes down to the way that you're using it and the intention behind it. And so right now, humanity is, it's at a very interesting stage. Maybe we can phrase it like that. And we have these tools available to us that might be able to do something to help us through this stage that we're in. But I think it also depends on how we're using them. And yes, psychedelics have come into the mainstream. They are pop. But for the most part, they're being used either recreationally or in a reductionist biomedical model to try and help with depression and basically improve productivity into the capitalist system, which arguably got us into this mess in the first place.
Well, yeah, that's the dilemma in a way, is that I'll come to that part where the depression part, trying to solve the depression part, it's like, oh yeah, we want to use the tool. That's why MDMA is so more receptive, because it's something which you can really control. You know exactly what dosage you're giving your patient. With mushrooms or ayahuasca, it is pretty hard. Well, with mushrooms particularly, it's like what part of the stem you are giving, because some parts are more concentrated with psilocybin and some are not, and the experience is actually really different with mushrooms. Like I can see with the MDMA, when I was doing the maps kind of the guidance which they have developed this. Yeah, it's very specific, the experience. It's very much more standard. But with mushrooms, like a week to week, like nothing much has changed. It's just a completely different experience.
But it also depends on what your perception is of those medicines, right? So with MDMA, we know, that it's, we know what it is. We know what receptors it's going to be targeting. With ayahuasca and psilocybin, okay, is that a psilocybin agonist, or is this a portal into the spirit world, which is what half the world are saying and the other half of the world don't necessarily believe? So, I mean, there's also that, which is, are we just using these medicines in an inappropriate way? And so I had this discussion with Rono, who, the Shipibo maestro I work with in the Amazon rainforest. And I was telling him about the studies that we've been doing, all around the world, using psychedelics in hospital-based settings. And he said, "Oh, okay, that's interesting that they're happening. I'm glad that the Western world is taking more of an interest in in psychedelics, in these sacred medicines. But who do you have to conduct the ceremonies? Who have you got trained in energy work? Who's in the room? What training do they have?" And I said, "Oh, well, no one really. It's just a therapist or a psychiatrist." It's like, what? So there's who's making sure the container is safe? Who's cleaning the energetic blockages? Who's doing the exorcisms that are bound to that are going to need to be done? That's what nobody. That's just not being done at all. The substances are just being given, and then there's therapy alongside. And he was appalled, and he said that's really, really unsafe. And what he said is, it's a little bit like going to an airport and then going out onto the runway and just randomly getting onto a plane. And you don't know whether you're going to Ibiza, which would be awesome, or you're going to end up in Gaza. You're opening a random door without the experience to do that. And interestingly, I've had similar conversations, but the complete opposite with people in the Western world. Who say, I have real concerns with these retreat centers in the Amazon rainforest. There are people there without medical degrees who are giving these psychedelics. What's going to happen if something goes wrong? They're not trained in psychotherapy. This is completely irresponsible. Which is curious because they're both kind of saying the same but opposite thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so actually, I didn't realize that they did not have in hospitals anyone who actually understands the dynamics of where the medicine comes from, which is like trained in they don't have to believe in a way, at least just have some sort of awareness of like what is the subjectivity at least, which is weird that sorry. That's not there. Actually, I felt the same sensation as you were talking, because when I see people here would take psychedelics, and it's fantastic. It really, for me in my head, this is the example which comes to me. It's like you blindfolded crossing a highway when you take a psychedelic. It's like many people are lucky and they find it, and it's very risky and it's good. And sometimes people who are okay with it always have some sort of a spiritual dynamic somewhere around there. A dancer, it's a very spiritual practice. An artist, someone. But sometimes you might have nothing. You really have nothing to fall back on. When you have like everything is like intense, and this whatever has happened in your lineage can come to you in a way, in a memory or in an instinct, and it can help you. But sometimes there isn't any, or you are completely actually blocking it yourself. Like it's like trying to help you, but you are actually blocking it. And I'm just, well, that is the preparation, which I'm surprised. It's like when I first wanted to do salvia, I think I prepared for like 4 months, and I was thinking that I know what these experiences like, because over there when you prepare for years, like years, and every year you are there, you're preparing, and then you decide whether you're gonna engage in a ritual or not. Around 12, 13. So that I find very interesting, that people here, which I understand why, but there is a method of doing. This is how just it's been introduced. But I think it is important, the ritualistic element, which is very, very important now. And that is why I'm trying to do this study as well around ontological design, which has become a mainstream understanding, which actually really values ritual, and it's part of social science now. And so bring that out in a way to understand that how powerful it is. But also, like you can, now you can trying to plug in holes into a huge dam for it to not to flood the whole village, which is what with the system we have now. It's very obsolete system at this point. And I mean markets and military system and economic and money and even our social and moral system in a way. And I don't mean it's wrong or anything, it's just outdated and obsolete to the level of technologies we are injecting, and the way they are changing the dynamic on how we work. It's just not going to keep up with it. Now, we have to work on both sides. Slow down, well, not slow down, understand what these technologies are doing and really understand its power and allow them to grow, like psychedelics, how you can treat certain psychedelic experiences, allow them to integrate within what kind of energy forms we are, bring them into this world through this place where you are not have this like hole, the hole which can never be fulfilled, and you're going to fill with these technologies. So there's that front where you allow these technologies to like slowly be more sustainable in a way, and more integrated in a way. And then you have to change this kind of conditioning, fundamental conditioning around how I'm going to fulfill myself or what I will do outside in the world, which is valuable. I think this all ties into, oh, let me use this as a thing only to a level where it allows me to heal myself so that I can go back and plug into the older
Yeah.
system. And so,
Yeah.
so I think what I was trying to ask is that, let's say we do figure that out, and I think we like, so big part of my research really is this, is that how can we scale this understanding of this positive feedback ontological design learning in a very ritualistic setting, and understanding that respecting yourself, respecting the space around you is very important and allows you to connect with everything and, sync with the symphonies of nature. And pragmatically, it's just very useful for a sustainable growth. Like, even if you don't have to believe in anything, just pragmatically. But the respect and love is fundamental part of that process. Now, okay, we bring that in for sure. But I still think, like, imagine this person who you said works for McDonald's. He goes there. He might leave McDonald's, but he might, before he leaves, creates this amazing McDonald front, which actually brings more people in McDonald's.
Yeah.
So let's say we have figured it out. I just think still there are so many unintended consequences of such a powerful portal, because this is a very powerful portal. And I do want to talk about like our relationship. Sometimes when I've seen people go in, they are like treated as like deities or gods, or they are just like, oh, like just bow down, which is, there is a difference between respect and actually then just worshiping. It's a little tricky elements, because anyway, so we'll come to that part with the relationship between human consciousness and the plant, what it does, what is that interaction. But for now, I mean, because of the massive level of its use, which I can now see what you mean. There is a, first we have to, if I'm correct what you are saying, first we have to get to a place where we are actually using it in a context which is towards well-being and towards positive feedback loop and respect. We are far away from there, no doubt about it. And but let's say we do get to the place that somehow it is still like in a respectful way happening. Even still, there will be so many different unintended consequences of that, which it's like we just, I just don't know yet. Still, I just don't know that opening such portals at such a massive scale, what that means. And I don't think it's a bad thing or a good thing. I just genuinely don't know what it is. And I mean, once we clarify all layers, I mean, what that looks like is just a bit I'm not sure what it is.
It definitely concerns me, but that concern has changed over the years. And so previously, when I first started going to the Amazon rainforest, I had a very biomedical view on what psychedelics were. And then that changed as a result of my experiences in the Amazon rainforest, which ultimately led me to start training in Shipibo curanderismo. And I now, strongly feel that these are, as you say, that it's a vehicle to enter the spirit world, and then when you're in the spirit world, a whole host of things can take place, from absolutely incredible to absolutely devastating as well. And so it does concern me that there are so many people who are just opening these portals every weekend, just kind of at a party, and then even psychiatrists doing it with patients. I mean, okay, yeah, you've got a medical degree. It's not in this medicine. You're using somebody else's medicine and you don't fully understand. And also, you're not aware that you don't fully understand. You're unaware of how incompetent you are. And that's the most dangerous type of incompetency. And so, yeah, I'm concerned that I'm concerned that people are biting off far more than they can chew, thinking that actually, this is going to be a great treatment for depression, or they're going to be able to make some money from this experience. And actually, they may well be getting all kinds of negative energy stuck to them. Things are, in my opinion, almost without a shadow of a doubt, happening that most people in the Western world are not fully aware of. And I think we can all agree, we have very little idea of what's actually going on in the universe. The amount that we don't know vastly outweighs the amount that we do know. And I think this is extremely true, like with psychedelics and consciousness in general. Plus, the communities that have been working with psychedelics for the longest periods of time that still have those lineages intact are all warning against it. It's not just the Shipibo who I work with. There are elders from all over Brazil who are saying, whatever this psychedelic renaissance is, we appreciate that you're now taking an interest in our medicines. This is great. Please include us for ethical reasons. But also, you don't get it. These plants have a spirit. This isn't metaphor. This isn't theology. This isn't just our understanding of the world. We're saying these things are true, and you're just assuming they couldn't possibly be. Because in your Western society, the first culture, I think maybe even ever in this world, throughout the whole of history, don't have that connection to spirit. And look where that's got you. Look at the state of the world as a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is, this is a beautiful way you answered that, because I had this in my mind around a psychiatrist saying, oh my God, they don't have any medical experience. But it's like, but they have been using it for thousands of, or at least hundreds of years.
And they totally do have medical experience. It's just a different medicine.
Yeah.
Allopathic medicine is just one kind of medicine.
Yeah.
There's vast amounts throughout the rest of the world. It's bizarre.
No, yeah. That you're right. Like, this is it. I think this is the part where it's like, it doesn't matter if you believe in a particular external reality. It's just that you know what you experienced. Like, that for you is so true and powerful. Now, even just we take that element, it's like, I mean, how much was the preparation? Like, what was the preparation around it? Like, how are you contextualizing this experience? Okay, it's a weird thought. Jake Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Few times or something, or regularly in a way, and this is a weird, like a weird, morphed reality now we live in because of hyperconnectivity and internet. So I might be wrong, but people think that he's an idiot
No, I think you're right. And people do think he's an idiot.
Yeah. And they want to externalize it as in like, oh yeah, you. But it's like, but who's watching him? Like he's the number.
Yeah, I know.
Well, like, wait a second.
I know.
He's literally the product of this 2010 internet age. Literally the product. It's like the reason why he's so famous is because all of us are watching it. Obviously, if everyone is subscribed and watching it, that is the reason. But I think it's weird that I think, have changed since he started doing certain elements of psychedelics. And the reason why I started to listen to some things which he was saying is because he started fighting with MMA fighters. And I was like curious because I was like, I know how MMA fighters really fighting talks. And so sometimes I wanted to just see the it's like how is it gonna act? Because it's such an interesting concept for me to see. You are about to fight, and it is kind of a real fight, but it's boxing, so it's not. But it's the closest to a fight in a way. And then when you're gonna talk to your opponents, like what is it like? You're not training. I mean, what are you gonna say? How are you gonna bullshit your way, or are you gonna just sell it? You're gonna have confidence. So I started like that, but then I have listened to him as he has fought every single person, and I have looked at some of his YouTubes, some of the early videos, because I find him very interesting phenomena that what this person has gone through.
Yeah.
And so but I think with psychedelics, I weirdly feel he's actually better off. And the thing, and I think it's this is what I noticed. It's like one of the most famous influencers got influenced by psychedelics and then genuinely changes something within him, and he then tries to like infuse that in that momentum, which is just social overwhelm and information flood. And so yeah, it's like again, okay, by the way, we are at a point in a podcast that I'm now sharing like my wild intuitions. And so just to be
I'm
sure,
glad we're there now.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah. And so it's like that is like, if you see it in a informational and cosmic pattern, let's say, it's like there's this huge torrent of current which is breaking all these boundaries and sacred containers through these information overflow tornadoes, and everyone is getting trapped in it. And then there is this psychedelic getting interjected in it, ayahuasca particularly, through this influencer, and that pattern comes in and have a little presence within this cyberspace, which, yeah, it's just my observation. I've tried to see him like that at points, and then I can, I just like it comes through sometimes. This is what I think. So I think maybe it is not that bad. When some people are really scared that, oh my God, it's gone pop, and it's like, fuck, like these. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Like, I am worried myself, and that's what I was saying, that I'm worried. I was like, Jesus Christ, you people, are you kidding me? No preparation. You just called a goddess right next to your room on a blue whatever day, and you're just gonna travel. And it's like, there's a concern on that as well. But some cases, which is like, I'm looking at, I'm like, I don't know. It seems like maybe it's better off in a way. I don't know what to make of it, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where we end up in the coming years. It feels to me almost like new lineages need to be formed, because I think for most people who are going to take psychedelics or even drink ayahuasca, they're not going to go and train in Shipibo. For most people, that's kind of out of the question. But we do need some kind of structure and some kind of spiritual structure for how you can use these things. And I feel that the medical model just isn't cutting it. I mean, there, people kind of allude to, the spiritual aspects of psychedelics, but not in the same way that the curanderos do, in how you actually move the energy, how you work through it. And so I think for the most part, when people take psychedelics, there'll probably be some positive changes, but we need to kind of develop these Western ways of working with psychedelics as well. This is something I think that's probably going to happen now. And it's interesting with Jake Paul as well, because I also find him incredibly annoying, the little I know about him. But there's something extremely intriguing, and I think a lot of people have that, is that there's almost like a little resonance of a part of many people, which is, what happens if I just did whatever I wanted and everything was about attention? It doesn't matter what I do, just get the most amount of attention no matter what. And it seems like that guy is kind of doing it, and everyone, a part of them, kind of loves it. Even if they're like, oh my God, that's so annoying. It's like, yeah, it is, but there's this resonance with that 15 minutes of fame. He's a guy who's just had, 10 years, maybe 20 years of 15 minutes of fame, which is, he's a bizarre reflection of the world that we live in. And it's interesting that he's engaging in psychedelics as well. And of course, Tyson is too. And he recently fought Tyson. Yeah, it's super interesting.
Tyson has become another nod, which has spread a lot of psychedelic into a type of crowd which would have not really, been aware of it or would be receptive to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how's it been like? Because you are training full on for now 4 years or something.
Yeah, I think 5 years.
5 years.
I started in 2019.
Yeah. So, I mean, so how's that journey been? Because you were researching, but then you are like, okay, I'm gonna be training in that method, and what does that looks like? How does it feel like? I mean, how different it is? I mean, what are you going through these days? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely changed my perception of reality, for sure. Like the way that I understand health, the way that I understand the universe has completely shifted, has completely changed. And so I went through quite a long period of just trying to do as many plant dietas as I could. And now I'm kind of feeling, well, how do I integrate this back into the Western world? I'm not Shipibo. I don't live in the Amazon rainforest, even though I've been, going back and forward to there frequently. What does this look like? And I think this is kind of like related to the previous point in these new lineages that have to form, and these new lineages that are forming. And this is normal, this happens in all, major religions, Christianity and Islam. It happens all the time in the psychedelic traditions. And so, for example, one of the core components of the ceremonial toolkit, if you want to call it that, in ayahuasca ceremonies, is agua florida, which is this, it's flower water. And when I first started using it, I assumed that it must have been this kind of, this ancient Peruvian remedy. I then realized it was entirely synthetic, and then realized on the bottle it says made in New York. And I was like, what the? Why? And everywhere, like all the Shipibo all have agua florida. And then I looked into it and found that this was a company that made a room deodorizer. That's what it is. Agua florida is a room deodorizer. And they almost went out of business in around the 90s before ayahuasca started getting popular. And then the Shipibo started using agua florida in their ceremonies. They found that it happened to be good at removing negative energy. Of course, Shipibo is based on animism. everything has a spirit, not just natural things. And the spirit of Agua Florida happened to be very effective at getting rid of negative energy. It's a liquid, so you can easily put it in your mouth and spray it, which is very, very handy. And so this company in New York that almost went out of business suddenly got a huge increase in the numbers of orders of bottles for Agua Florida from Peru, because all the people, who were traveling to Peru and wanting to drink ayahuasca, and so a lot more people were buying it, didn't go out of bust, didn't go out of business, and then put on their bottles, not for internal use, because people were putting it in their mouths and, spraying it in ceremonies, and now continue to ship huge amounts of Agua Florida to Peru. And that has been a change in the tradition that's been incorporated into the tradition. It's a funny one, but it illustrates how these traditions are dynamic. They're dynamic processes. And so the situation that we're in now is that whether you agree with it or not, ayahuasca has spread across the world. And we have Gwyneth Paltrow and Jake Paul speaking publicly about their ayahuasca experiences. And so I think we need to begin to develop these new containers, these new spiritual containers that honor the traditions that they came from, are adapted for Western people, but also are less reductionistic and more holistic than just the biomedical model. Unfortunately, a lot of these, these kind of influencers and celebrities seem to be very open to the spiritual component. Mike Tyson, he's really into 5-MeO-DMT, into Bufo. He speaks very openly about the spirit of Bufo. Will Smith said that the spirit of ayahuasca gave him a warning that his life could fall apart at any second, just before he slapped Chris Rock in the face at the Oscars. He wrote about that in his book, I Am Will. Yeah. So these people are open to the spirit of ayahuasca. And so who knows, maybe this is part of the plan of ayahuasca. The Shipibo talk about ayahuasca having a very strong spirit. It's sentient and it has a plan. And if that is true, it's not an excuse for cultural appropriation. We can't just use that however we want and ignore indigenous people and say, oh, ayahuasca must have, had this plan. It's similar to ayahuasca told me. But it does make you think, okay, ayahuasca and psychedelics have spread. There appears to be this new container forming around them that's not just biomedical science. Could this lead into something that's potentially good and beautiful? So I try to refrain from thinking, oh my God, not that, not Jake Paul. Even Jake Paul's drinking ayahuasca. This used to be this cool niche thing that I was interested in, and now I'm just the same as Jake Paul. But maybe this is actually, the beginning, of the genesis of a new lineage and a new tradition.
I think this is definitely, I have this positive feeling because I had this question around me, which is like Eleusinian mysteries, like the Greek one, or other priesthood type rituals, which, are kept in like within certain initiates. It's like whether to do that or whether to just let these powerful portals, go out.
Well, I think that most of it will remain. Most of the depth will remain for people who are initiated. So with the training in Shipibo, the more that you diet, the more that you train, you enter new realms of understanding, which are revealed to you by the plants themselves, by the spirits of the plants. And you only get there through dedication, through work, and through devotion. And so I think that that there will naturally, it will remain safeguarded by the spirits, those sides of things. And there are plenty of things that the Shipibo, if you have an experience with a spirit, they'll say, okay, don't talk about that. That's too sacred. Don't talk about that. But maybe it's just the container that's going to change with this in the modern times that we see.
Yeah, true. I think it feels like that this time we have learned enough from the mistake from the 60s or 70s, where it's always the case whether you're like, oh well, this is wrong, like this needs to go out, this is such an important knowledge, but then you do give it out without people having the discipline to actually receive it, or maybe they are at a place where their mindset is in a very specific ideological space, like you are actually, projecting a message from a pinhole. So people in 60s and 70s, if you like, as much as I look at it, it's definitely is very much, it's weird, the space it created, and it changed a lot of things, it challenged a lot of things, but it also created this cultish type behavior, which is very fixed. And it's like it created like this, oh, this is love. Well, the same thing we were talking just before the podcast. It is right, so we are right. And there was this kind of like push, which is like, before it could transform these people, truly, these experiences into this like a grounded kindness experience and patience. It was that the experience gave them this vision, which obviously was beautiful, but then they just didn't have the container and the capacity to really go through it. You know how people get Jesus complex? Few times they do psychedelics, they're like, yep, I'm the one. So it's very similar, I imagine it happened. And also there were some people whose mindset were very specific still at that time, and they projected that message from their good heart in a very specific way without really realizing what they are saying and projecting. And then that created a huge kind of opposition from the other side. And then it became like this dynamic. And I think now we have learned it. I think this is a beautiful place, which you just described, that it actually isn't just about like whether it's spreading. It's actually vertical spread, but also a horizontal. Oh, sorry,
Exactly.
sorry. It's a horizontal and a vertical process.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, but I think this is I feel fairly confident that how it has become popular, it is very organic. It's gone through so many different pathways and weird spaces and celebrities and spiritual leaders and academics and researchers, and then there is these lineages which are being formed and they are connecting the globe slowly. But yes, you're right, it's like it's open. It's like, if you want to learn jiu-jitsu, you're more than welcome. I mean, you can learn just being a white belt, come here, exercise all, and it would be fantastic. You would have so much benefit, but you will not be a master, and no one is stopping you to be a master. It just requires a lot of dedication, discipline, and continuity of doing certain things in a way. And I find I think this is a really good balance. I have thought about this in that manner, like whether you keep it or you, but I think it has already happened. It has played out. And now how is it happening? It's much more peaceful and organic. So there is less actually there's less concern at this point for it to be that popular, although obviously there is huge problems. I think that's a different topic, where how much corporations are in it and how much results, as you were saying, looked from a particular point of view are not as satisfying as we thought, and whether these things will become again like broken down parts of chemical which will help people to get on a hamster wheel.
It reminds me a little bit, though, of other religions as well. I mean, I don't think that, kind of ayahuasca or Shipibo is a religion. I don't think that's really the right term. It's probably the closest term that you could have, but you know what I mean. But it reminds me of, Christianity, meditation, mindfulness, all of these things. If you look at, again, original Christianity, it's really extreme. It's super extreme. The kind of, if you were to follow Jesus's teachings, it's a very extreme way to live. Now, most people don't have those beliefs and don't follow those teachings, who I've seen who go to church, is more kind of cultural. And again, with mindfulness, we've ended up with something, a lot of people call it muk mindfulness, which is this version of mindfulness, which is very, very different to the original, mindfulness, kind of Buddhist techniques. Equally with yoga as well, yoga now, all the kind of the yummy mummies going to take their kids to a mother and baby yoga class in Peckham is very, very different, to the strict Indian, kind of yoga practices. And it may well be that we end up with a different version of psychedelics, one which has benefit for some people. Like, I'm not knocking mindfulness for everyone. I use an app to meditate every morning, and it's been, other than ayahuasca and plant dietas, probably the most transformational thing in my life. The benefits of yoga for those young mums in Peckham, brilliant. Honestly, this is great, but it's very, very different from following the full spiritual path with discipline. And I think that might be the direction that we're going in, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, as long as we're respecting the origins of these psychedelics and also have an awareness of the spiritual power associated with them. And then we have a choice if we want to engage and we want to go further, or if we want it to remain a surface level relationship.
I like it. I like it what sometimes Hamilton Morris has talked about, that it's valuable to go to jungle, but if we are going to do that, well, what he does it generally so often, and really try to understand it and study it, it has to start to happen in London. As in, like, if you are doing psychedelic of any type, to do it in your context. Is that what I'm saying? It's like, rather than just being a visitor all the time and just going somewhere, unless you want to be a master, if you, like, this is the new lineage part, which I'm trying to refer it to. It's tricky in a way that how you not be always constantly a visitor over there, but actually slowly learn enough, respect enough, and then start to do it here. Mm-hmm. And that would develop new ways of doing it.
For sure. I mean, this is very much the process that I'm in now. So yeah, I've been going back to the jungle back and forwards for the last 10 years. And I'm definitely not from the jungle. Physiologically, I'm very aware when I'm in the jungle that I'm not built for this environment.
Tell me more about that.
I mean, just the amount of mosquito bites like that you get, and it does get, your body does adapt, like it begins to adapt, and again it begins to adapt to the heat. But over the last decade, I've been stuck in this perpetual not being adapted to either climate, because I spent a few months here, a few months there, a few months here, a few months there, and just like constantly freezing or covered in mosquito bites and other bites. And so when one of my teachers from the Amazon rainforest moved to Portugal and started running ceremonies in Portugal, I was pretty relieved. So I was like, okay, brilliant. So it's not as far to go. And now I can split my time between Portugal, Amazon rainforest, and the UK. This is more feasible. This is more doable. And then when we started doing that, there's something about doing it on your own soil, and I'm not Portuguese, but it's Europe, so it's closer. I don't feel like the environment's trying to kill me the whole time as well, which is always a bonus. But then the tradition that we were following also started changing. So my teacher, he started dieting a plant called blue lotus. Now, blue lotus isn't a jungle plant. It's from Egypt and also Southeast Asia. And then when he started dieting it, obviously I started dieting it as well because I'm his apprentice. So now we're both dieting blue lotus. And then aspects of the history of lotus started being brought into our ceremonies. So my teacher would sing, the medicinal chants, the Icaros, and he started bringing in Sanskrit related to lotus. Start bringing in other kind of concepts, things that are outside of Shipibo. And he's so advanced. He's been trading in some form in ayahuasca for the last, 20 years, something like that. He's so advanced that he knows for sure when something's working and when it's not. And not just in a kind of, oh, does it feel right? Does it sound right? No, is this functional? Is this functional to move the energy? Is this functional to remove the blockages? Is this functional when it comes to exorcisms? All of these kinds of things, the plant dietas. And it's totally functional. And so what I'm seeing now in this lineage in Portugal is a new lineage, which is awesome. It has the blessing of the Shipibo, who trained both my teacher and myself. And it also has been adapted gradually over time based on different interests, things that resonate with us personally. And that's awesome. I feel most comfortable when I'm working in Portugal, because I'm like, this is my lineage. It doesn't even have a name yet. Like, well, what is it? I'm not sure. It's only just started. And we, a good friend of ours came over to do a diet with us a few months ago. And she's based in the Amazon rainforest. And she was saying, what is this? This is really cool. Like, this is some kind of, like Buddhist, Shipibo, European lineage, which is, a heavy part of the Shipibo tradition is based around brujeria, witchcraft. People don't really talk about it that much when it comes to ayahuasca. The Western concept is so focused on love and light that it seems to ignore this other side, which is really important. It's the other 50% of ayahuasca. But we don't really like that stuff, so we just don't engage in the brujeria. And so it's yet another adaptation, creating this new lineage, which I think is super beautiful when done in the right way. And I really strongly feel that this particular lineage is being done in the right way.
That is beautiful. Anything else?
I really want you to hear these Icaros there.
Oh,
it's awesome. So you occasionally, the way that you learn Shipibo traditionally is that you record the maestro singing, or before we had recording devices, I imagine it was actually just listened because it was never written down. But what we would always do is record the maestro singing, and then you, after the ceremony, spend hours just trying to figure out what they said, and you write it down and just kind of determine what they said. And it's a really inefficient way of learning. But my Shipibo is fine, it's fairly decent. But when I've been transcribing Icaros from my teacher, I'm like, did he just say karma? He did, didn't he? Karma. Well, karma's not a Shipibo concept, not a Shipibo word. And then I would question, did you say karma? So, oh yeah, I'm just cleaning the karma of the people in the room. Oh, but that's not Shipibo. No, but it's working. It's like, this is great. This is amazing. It's so beautiful. And so you can literally just listen to the Icaros and hear these different concepts from different cultures being woven into the medicinal songs and the chanting, which is, it's awesome. It's super beautiful.
I cannot wait to experience it. It's fantastic. Personally, I want to talk a lot, but this seems like a beautiful place. Anyway, but do you think that leaving the dark arts would leaves, not that you have to engage, okay, let me first clarify what it actually even means. Well, you're not engaging in it, brujeria.
No.
Yeah, you're not engaging it.
No,
but
I just get occasionally cursed from time to time.
yes.
But not intentionally.
Yeah. But I mean, but to know how to defend against it and not losing the skill, is that also part of like just learning overall? It's like, you because it's like, well, you get attacked all the time in that place with different things and energies, and sometimes people unconsciously,
Mm-hmm.
you know, doing elements. So but it's like you're still learning the dark, defending the dark art. I just
You're
want to
right. No,
clarify.
you're right. You're right. I mean, I guess in that way, it is still engaging with it. It is still engaging with it because you have to, you have to learn how to deal with it, and the Shipibo say that those kind of negative energy attacks are one of the fundamental ways that you learn. That's how you upgrade, and that's definitely been my experience, is going through those those experiences, which I definitely I don't want to go through them more than I have to, but every time I have, it's always been a massive leveling up experience. Terrible when you're going through it, don't get me wrong, but then afterwards you pop out the other side and you're like, okay, great, now I've kind of leveled up as a result of it. But it's not sending it out. It's not being an active
Contributor into
exactly
the,
into negative
exactly,
energy.
yeah.
It's more like being an earth plug and just trying to kind of try to neutralize all the shit that comes your way.
Yeah. I mean, again, however comfortable you are, I have over the course of time have developed, well, it's not me per se, as in like created this, but I meant like as I was growing up, we have these spirits and deities which does certain things. So you just were told about all of these, and then you engage in like chanting and these all night like drumming or okay, so actually when I say drumming, I mean we do this pattern on the chest. So you hit your chest to create that the drumming sound while someone is chanting. Yes.
Whilst chanting.
Yes, exactly. So you do both, as in you yourself also, and the pace changes, depends on the rhythm. And so it's like acute pain constant for like couple of hours and freezing cold, shirtless, things like that. And then you are in that space, you're like you're no longer this thing, you're just like a smoke. And so then you interact with these deities, and you're like, oh yeah, this one, I get along really well, without even, there's no as such a thought process. What I'm saying is the after the fact of what has happened. And so you are like, oh, I'm really close to this I'm really close to this energy or deity or the representation of universe. There's different level of things, and then you have them with you. And so then you get sometimes you have a horrible attack, or even just a bad day sometimes, or a catastrophe happens in your life. And so it depends, like sometimes you can, sometimes you cannot. You engage these various different elements. And so over the course of time, as I have come here and I've interacted with psychedelics, and I've interacted with Western developmental psychology and other type of disciplines or lineages, I have started to create like these similar and beings which protects, and they are like, sometimes they are a bit hybrid. Sometimes they are like straight out of like comic anime style things, which are based on real comics mostly. That's why they're so interesting and popular, that they are based on these real energetic stories coming down centuries sometimes. And so and they are like really useful in various different spaces. Like I just it's just call it like, and then I've started to also have these spell holders, which I call just visualization of spell holders. And so there are so many spells over there, and I just didn't realize that what they were. In a way, they are like so you have Isme Azam, which is a spell in itself. Then there are spell holders, which is like talismans. So you combine a spell into a object, imbue it into the object, and then that becomes a talisman. And then you have spell holders. But what I'm saying is, in a way, why I want to say it is that there are subjective patterns which you can create in that spell holder. And you, let's say, are having a horrible dream constantly. It's as real for you as anything else, and then you can engage that spell holder at times, and it can like really protect you. And sometimes you can even engage deities. And as I have worked around like integrating this, I have a very like a grade of like a scale of things which I have like like a deities and beings which are now working in different elements. And the reason why I'm saying it is because I actually learned that from ayahuasca curandero
Really?
online podcast. So they were talking about I have heard him so many times, like 6-7 times, like 2-3 hour podcasts, which personally for me, a lot of time. Like a 3-hour conversation coming from that heart is a lot of knowledge. And so I have heard him like 4 times, something like that.
What was his name?
Hamilton, not Hamilton Morris.
The well-known curandero, Hamilton Morris.
Yeah, exactly. No. Definitely Hamilton.
Does he run Blue Morpho?
Blue Morpho.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're right. So, which also they have a lot of different type of plant dieta, like a different type of like iteration of techniques as well. But similar, case with him. He was American, went there, realized, and he's been talking about that a lot. And just weirdly, while he was talking about it, I was like in that space, the deity starts to show up, and I'm like, oh, I understand what you mean. Like I started to like kind of project, overlay my older experience into what he's saying, and I'm like, oh, this fits really well. But what you have done, which obviously how I grew up hasn't, because no one engages in it. There's not much negative clashes in a way, because every single person in the community does the thing. So imagine if every single person is in some way curandero. So it's like
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So the protection spell is so strong that no one cares about negative element when combined together. It's just the physical problems you have, or emotions and hurt and all that. In that you engage. So they are not. So you can see, like it's like if you're not being attacked, you're not going to develop skills so precise. So no one is getting attacked there as much at all in that manner. I mean, there are attacks, but not like at a level which people in ayahuasca tradition describe. Like they have categorized it really well in that manner, like which energies, where, what do you call, what level of attack is this, what level of attack I have to now bring in to defend myself. And as I was overlaying it, I was like, oh yes, okay, that makes sense. Oh, I need to just make it a little bit precise. Now, again, like this is it. Like I am as comfortable right now to tell this. If you are comfortable, or if you have developed some things, because I understand very well, like there's just, you can't say full, I imagine. But I mean, if you can, for sure. But is it like, as the lineage is morphing and evolving into something, is there like a difference now because you are just defending? Because even that is evolving. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm trying. Yeah, I don't know exactly how to ask this question also, because I haven't engaged with it.
Yeah, I mean, It's a tricky one to answer. I think so much of it is also just in the decisions surrounding which plants to diet. So, for example, there's a concept in Shipibo called shatana, which is basically the sins of the plant.
Shatana?
Shatana. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
You know what shaitan means?
Shaitan. Sin?
Devil.
Really?
Yeah, like Lucifer.
In Urdu?
Yeah.
Really?
In Arabic.
In Arabic?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Crazy.
Interesting.
I know.
Yeah. Shatana. Yeah, it's like the sins of the plant.
Okay.
And you get some plants that don't have shatana, very, very rarely, and they're pure light, enlightened beings. Most plants have a degree of shatana, kind of like a dark side. It's kind of like a Western way to think about it. It's not quite as simple as that. And so I only diet plants that don't have shatana, which is pretty much Noya Rao and Blue Lotus, arguably Bobinsana. And so that is it's interesting because that in itself is quite a radical way to work with plants, quite a radical way to train in curanderismo. Because most people would, it's true, most people have one or two main ones, but then they kind of like diet lots of other plants because they have different characteristics. And a lot of the plants that do have a lot of shatana can be particularly good at defense, for example. But there is one lineage, and I do work closely with a Shipibo guy who is directly from this lineage, the Mawa lineage, and they're strict to Noya Rao, and they do a similar thing where they only diet, because Noya Rao as a plant, as an energy, is so sensitive, they only diet plants that won't interact with Noya Rao to keep Noya Rao as pure as possible. And so in that way, I guess the new way that we who are in this community of people like loosely based in Portugal isn't actually that new. It's also just it's practiced by indigenous people in the Amazon rainforest. But I guess it would also affect singing as well. There's less need to be chanting aggressive things, but it's a reflection on everyday life, right? I feel as above, so below. In the spirit world, as in real life, if you encounter a spirit that you think might be aggressive, if you suddenly, in Shipibo, you take out your flaming swords, you put on your armor on and you basically prepare for battle. That's what you're singing in Shipibo. Then that spirit is far more likely to do the same. The same as like if we go back to Manchester, where apparently everyone is evil.
now
everyone's evil. Yeah.
1 hour later,
and you're at the bus stop, and you assume that everyone is evil in Manchester, and you start acting like that and believing that the interaction of other people is likely to reflect that because they pick up on your hostility. But if we now come to the conclusion that actually everyone in Manchester is probably really nice, and so at the same bus stop, if we see somebody who is acting a bit untoward, rather than getting ready to fight them, we might think, oh, I wonder what's gone wrong with this person. I wonder if they're okay. And so the way that myself and my teacher approach these things in ceremony is, instead of just whipping out your sword and ready to fight this spirit, try and engage in a dialogue, see what's going on, literally see if you can de-escalate the situation.
Very interesting.
Really interesting. It's really interesting. There are such parallels between the spirit world and and the human world. I mean, in Shipibo cosmology, they talk about 3 levels, 3 planes. You have the material, which is obviously where we're at. The spiritual, which is where the plant spirits and the entities are. And then the divine, which is really kind of God. So, I mean, the way I see it is we're just another plane, and similar rules apply.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. It's well, this brings back to that human consciousness as well goes down, because it's part of it, but it has a very specific, it's part of the earth itself, which plants are as well. But the expression of human consciousness does go deep down to hell, but it also goes towards the divine realm in some way and form. And that is probably one of the reasons why we can reach to the place where we don't even know that we are human. Like there's this, yeah, there's no remembrance of human, but there is a presence of some sort. And then the clear distinction coming somehow back and remembering is like, oh yeah, oh okay, I get it, like this is what a human feels like. And I think this is why it's very interesting, the true interspecies communication. Like I just find it fascinating beyond anything.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, really. I mean, this is personally, ultimately, this is one of the most bright avenues of becoming wiser as a species. And I don't think that just an interaction is going to make us wiser. I really don't. I'm not saying that, because that's what a mistake we can make with the magic pill. It is, the work starts afterwards, really. Like this is the integration within what we are and what our bodies are. Yes, there is a personality, just my word. And then the body, which is capital BODY, which is all of life form in itself. And then all of that life form's connection to the earth itself, where it comes from, could be like a god level consciousness for us, as far as we are concerned. And then that is connected to the solar system, to the black hole of our galaxy, in that manner. So in these like planes, as you were of existence, as you were saying it, when we do meet with these kind of plant expressions of consciousness, I think that's a very that's a very interesting point. I think I really want to understand that more and more. And I think it is time, slowly at this point, to start engaging with that a bit more, and to integrate this becoming wiser as a species, and then interspecies communication. And that's what's coming to me these days at that time, because I see like a lot of quests which people are doing, for sure, and there are, different elements around it. And I think this is what my feeling has been, and once actually talking to you today has been much more like an indicator towards it as well. And really, like I actually didn't really know much about this lineage and the distinction of what you were doing. So that was very interesting to really understand it a little bit more.
I'm glad.
And but you do get attacked.
Yes, frequently.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there are tools which you must have developed now,
Yeah.
which you engage to protect. And is there a level of what you bring out, or who do you call? Or is it now becoming, how like a second nature, that you don't even have to think? So at a certain level, you don't have to think. Okay, if it's a huge one, then you actually might have to give attention and actually think and understand like what it is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the concept of attack is like an interesting one as well, because we're using it quite loosely, but it could be any kind of negative energy that's coming towards you. And most of the time, almost always, it's unconscious, right? And so it's some negative energy that's stuck to somebody else that then makes its way to me for a variety of reasons. For example, because I'm working on it, trying to remove it from somebody else. And when that does happen, there are different ways to approach it. And so, from one of the mildest forms, so like encountering some kind of negative energy, and the negative energy could definitely just be yours as well. It doesn't need to be from someone else. It could be yours. It's called getting crossed, and it's a little bit like if you have an antenna or on a TV and somebody bends it, and so your connection, the signal, gets bent, and so is offline, and so you can feel that you're out of tune. And so when that happens, it's really a case of trying to raise yourself above it so that it's not all encompassing of you, so that you can see clearly above it. And then when you're above it, you do something to try and clean it. So if you're in ceremony, you can sing, you can use the tools that you have. So the kind of shamanic pipe with mapacho, Aglath Farida, that's mass produced in New York, to try and remove some of that negative energy. But then, it goes all the way up to negative attachments or brujeria, when you might need to do a whole host of other things. And so additional purgatives with special plants, vapor baths, even baths in gasoline, is another one that you can use to get rid of particularly negative energy. And of course, work in ceremony, Icaros, quite often getting help from outside people as well, if it's particularly severe. So there are different ways that you can deal with it as well, depending on the severity of what it is. But, one thing that's particularly interesting that they do really highlight, or at least my teachers have really highlighted, is that just because you're experiencing negative energy doesn't mean it's not from you. And I think that everyone is definitely in my case, and, from what I've experienced with other people and the guidance and advice from my teachers, is people assume, there's some negative energy. I've picked up on some negative energy. Where's it come from? I need to get rid of it because it can't have come from me. Actually, more often than not, when it's the small amounts of negative energy, especially when you're starting, it's usually from you, something that you've done in the day, which makes you really aware of the way that you're living, and also the need to clean your own act up before you start making accusations towards other people.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the recently, like I've been listening to a lot of friends going through therapy. Everyone is going through therapy. It's just which is a different conversation.
Yeah.
But such a broken system. But so it's like ultimately they are. You can see it, which is that when it comes to this negative energy coming from within, it's like either. And it's so hard. It's so hard. Like, I think what I'm saying, it's so hard. And I just wanted to say it because I'm just going to gloss over it because we're talking about something else. That there's something terrible about human capacity, which you are unable to accept, which is one of the biggest problem. And it projects in various different ways. Grossly generalizing. This is the quest. Whatever it is ultimately, in that insane negativity, which is like actually projecting as a monster. Sometimes it's like, like you just cannot accept that humans have this capacity to be that vicious. Not my mom. Are you kidding? Not the family. It's just because if you accept that, then you're like, I have that too. And then there's a second element, which is that there is something about yourself which just you're unable to accept, really, or you not accept, you just cannot forgive it. Not even forgive, you're just not able to be able to empathetic about it. The parts which we really want, the well parts, and then there are parts which are like unwell parts of us, But then there are parts which are unwanted parts.
Mm-hmm.
We don't never want those parts. And because we are this dynamic life form, we have this shadow self, and there are some parts in our shadow selves. It's the same example of like you're having this crazy dream of a monster chasing you. You gotta and then you have to be like, what is this monster? At least that becomes a third person. You now know what is chasing you. Then it comes and sit in front of you on a chair. Finally, you made it a second person, like the very simple example. Ultimately, most cases, like really, most cases, it's like, oh, that was fucking me. It was just me
Yeah.
becoming the monster. Like in most cases, and that's why I wanted to be like, separate these things. We are talking about a different realm sometimes, but yes, you're right. Like most of the times when people are in insane anxiety and panic attacks generally, and I'm not talking about like actual PTSD cases and some, trouble which has happened or abuse. I'm saying generally, if it's a regular life situations overall, it is just that something which is like you consider monstrous, but it is part of you.
For sure. One of the most beautiful definitions I've heard of enlightenment as well is when you obtain the ability to accept every single part of yourself, then that is enlightenment.
True.
So that is all of the parts that you might have perceived to be repulsive or unacceptable. That's when you obtain enlightenment.
Yeah. I'm gonna just say about the thing which you are saying about the lineage. I mean, there is a character from an old archetypical story which is then animated into a series, like an animated series, in a particular take. And it's like magic is part of it, and other life forms, and demons and all that is part of this animation. And that character is like so close to how I feel in certain spaces when I was in Lahore doing those rituals. And that character does not actually connect to this saints or deities who's a human, like a human getting to the place of this like divinity in a way. It's like a representing this human became like a representation of like some universal force. And so when I connect to that kind of like deity or divine force, there is this feeling which I have, and that character which I saw is that version of my feeling. It was so close to that, and slowly it became part of my arsenal in a way. And that happened because there was other vision which came of like, one hand, for me, this is what has been mostly the vision, is like a translator of indigenous wisdom and techno emergence. So has been like, one hand is like filled with wines and like magic in a way, and the other hand is like creating portals through technology like Neo. It's like that. And so that character represents something like that, and it would have been if I exactly say the character's name. I can't say it. I just don't feel like I can say it right now, but I might say at some point. But if if I would have thought about it, this evolution of lineage which I'm talking about, I would have laughed at it. I would have said, there's no way this would ever be possible. Like, you comparing like these bloody cartoons to this sacred, what are you talking about? That's never going to happen. But that thing actually is such an integrative part.
Yeah.
Which protects me now actively I mean, genuinely, it happened. I was so tired, and something very external happened, like a nightmarish thing while I was awake. It felt like I was in a nightmare while I was awake. Couldn't fall asleep. The thing helped me. Like,
So interesting. So I got a good story for you. So a few years ago, a good friend of mine was in the Amazon rainforest with one of our teachers. And he was setting up a vapor bath, so a big pot with lots of plants on in it, in boiling water, and then you go under a tarp and you basically do like a sauna, a medicinal sauna. And our teacher, Shipibo Maestro, said, you know, go to the market and get all of these plants, and make sure you get a Jackie Chan DVD. And break up the Jackie Chan DVD and put it into the medicinal sauna
any Jackie
with all
Chan.
the plants. Any Jackie Chan, doesn't matter which one, just a Jackie Chan DVD. And so my friend thought, all right, well, I'm going to go to the market. I'll get all the plants, come back. I'm not going to get the Jackie Chan DVD because that's clearly ridiculous. And I'm definitely not going to put it in this sauna because we're not going to like vapor DVD. You know, how that's, you know, it's just plastic chemicals. And yeah. Anyway, and so the Shipibo Maestro came back and the medicinal sauna didn't work to remove this negative energy that they were trying to remove from a participant. And the Maestro said, did you get everything from the market? And my friend was like, yeah, I got it. I was like, did you get this plant, this plant, this plant? Yeah, I put it all in. So what about the Jackie Chan DVD? It's like, wow. No, I didn't get that, you know, but I got all of the medicinal plants you asked for. And the Maestro was like, no, I told you, get exactly what I said. And so he went back and he got the Jackie Chan DVD. He broke it up and he put it in. And I think it was some kind of like exorcism or some kind of demon came out or something. And then, yeah, my friend was just like, what? Like, what? It was, how on earth could a Jackie Chan DVD have resulted in that? And the way that I understand it is that the maestros, and this fits with what's happening with you, rather than being like scientists in this case, they're like artists. You know, they create a container, they create reality based on their own consciousness. And so if this maestro had an agreement with the plants, with this energy, that it needed to somehow use the energy represented by this Jackie Chan DVD, and based on animism, there's the energy of this DVD somehow contains the impeccable fighting skills of Jackie Chan. And the maestro believes it to be true so strongly that he has created that reality with that energy, that somehow it works. And I'm not pretending that I know how this works, but it's stories like that are, you know, they're not rare either.
I mean, I was watching again a different animation, and this character visits in that just slightly at the end.
He withers.
Visits.
Oh, visits. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, at the end, and it's like far down in the timeline, and it was for me like unexpectedly such a like connective and loving and overwhelming experience. I was surprised. I mean, it's just like there's a context within that storyline, nothing to do with that. I mean, it was like the concept of like the interaction was happening at a different plane. Like, yes, there was a storyline, there's a screen, you see that, but I'm talking, and I know that feeling because there's a feeling, the feeling which I'm describing is that, you know, the feeling of like selflessness and overwhelming love, something people, I haven't taken That would be very revealing. I haven't yet taken ayahuasca ever, so I don't know exactly what that is. I can empathize with different psychedelics I have taken, but it would be like an MDMA or mother ayahuasca spirit kind of experience, something like that. I'm saying because half of the people haven't done the rituals which I'm talking about, like the pain rituals. There is this space where you become part of this plane where you see all these humans who have literally given everything and become this something else for love, and which love that binds everything and the void of the universe itself, something like that. They have tapped into that ultimate thing, whatever that is. And there's this space sometimes you can feel, you can touch that space, and there's that touching of that space, and that comes through certain mediums at times. And I was surprised that character recently, like actually 2 weeks ago, became that medium, just like a minute of what they do, like a little guest appearance.
Yeah.
And
Cameo.
Yeah, cameo. I actually knew that this person, because I'm watching it again. I was like, oh yeah, that was interesting. But I forgot how I felt at that time, and I think at this time it was even more powerful because of the practical help which happened in my life, which I didn't realize. And so it's like the connection became way more strong without me actually realizing it. And I mean, yes, I think with the CD, it now for me makes complete sense. Weirdly
enough, it does.
It makes complete sense. Shall we?
Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's do it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Raza.
Oh my
As
goodness.
per usual. And looking forward to the next one.
Oh yes. Okay. Take care, everyone.